Hello there folks, this is Ferenc on board again with a new video about, again about the coronavirus. I made a video before and I think I actually made another one in which I was more like babbling and I just exposed a few little thoughts about, why people seem to not understand the importance of greater things. But today's video hopefully will cover some of the ideas that I've read from other sources and I wouldn't mind sharing. And the point about this virus is, it actually has a big importance to humanity. Now, many people might not realize this because there's a great panic, more like there's a pandemic of panic, but in a way, I actually wouldn't panic like from the beginning, because why would I actually do? First of all, I'm not convinced this virus is, this threat is actually real, because there can always be something like, a facade for something else that's not necessarily worse, but you need to install some control on the population in order to, hide something else. And what other great control you can do you know, by unleashing something like a pseudo pandemic. Okay, it's not necessarily a true one probably, but it's like it's not enough for me to say that there have been a lot of Chinese people dying in China when some other sources claim that they have dealt with the virus and the infection quite fast, because hey, it's China. I mean, when you have 1.5 billion people in your country, you need rigorous control. You need everything to be set up perfectly, and every time there is an outbreak or something like that, also slightly weaker than that, but it has slightly better chances to mutate. And yes, it's also bad if it actually gets into people's lungs. Now, the point with it is that if one of these viruses gets to mutate, it's still mutated in a person's body. Okay, now the only way that person can actually spread the virus is if they cough. Okay, so why worry if someone is necessarily contaminated, because the only way they can give it is by coughing. Oh sure, they might also transmit it through the same water if it was drunk, if they drank from that bottle and you drink from it as well. But let's be honest, chances are very small, because when you drink water from a glass, right, or from a bottle, and you share it with someone else, it's the most you will actually exchange is a bit of saliva. That I don't even think it actually matters in a way, because I doubt this virus actually lives in your saliva for some reason. Okay, and I heard it does not go through your skin because it cannot withstand the acidic aspect of your skin. Sure, if you scratch yourself and exchange blood with someone else, yes, it's gonna spread, because if it's in your bloodstream, then you're also gonna give it to others if they get in touch, blood on blood. But let's be honest, there are far worse diseases that you could actually get through blood exchange, like for example AIDS. Okay, and it's also important to note how easily people freak out, because when the Amazon forest burned like continuously for 30 years or so, for 30 days or so, okay, the local authorities were crying to the whole world, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing anything to save the Amazon? And guess what? No one did much about that anyways. Okay, and when the Notre Dame was burnt down, okay, partly or entirely, because it's not an important aspect to me, again, the people actually rushed to help restore it. But hey, is I don't know, is a cathedral, even if it is an old one indeed, and it has an interesting design, yes, I can say, but is it actually more important to us than nature herself? I mean, nature herself has been nourishing us for ever since we were like prototype humans. Okay, ever since we breathed as a first cell in this universe, and actually on this planet specifically. And caring for some of our constructs actually shows how attached we are. And actually the coronavirus, as of what I heard from a single source, but a very potent and wise one, it is actually a representative of our narcissism as a race. We have a lot of it. We get, like narcissists, we get attached to so many things, like, you know, architecture and our own hometowns and our cities, and all the objects we have around, and we become dependent on them because we are very aware actually that our life is miserable, but we aren't doing anything to improve it. And worse than that, most people actually find it interesting, and actually they find it as a lifestyle to keep drawing down other people. Now this is part of every person's challenge in a way, because at a higher level everything happens for us so that we learn through experience. Now the point is, this universe, I mean this planet where we live in on, is kind of endangered in a way by this behavior that we are heading towards in a way, because we are acting now more and more narcissistic. In case of emergency, like literally in this case, everyone is for himself. Countries close their borders. Like in a way, some people can say that the European Union is kind of dead, and I don't feel bad for it anyways, because as a person living in the eastern countries of Europe, it's like it didn't serve us that much in a way, except allowing us to, travel for free to the west. But we were still looked upon as the weaker ones, right? The lower humans by some of the Western people, because hey, you know what? Your governments actually are sucking our countries dry, and then guess what? We are also the weaklings. Like, okay, then you deserve your fate. Everything that you put out, be it that as population or as government, still impacts the whole planet, and the whole planet will actually suffer. Now you might think one thing, like, why is it that I as population have to suffer because of the government? Well, because you as population is not doing or are not doing anything to prevent the mingling of governmental forces into other countries' businesses, okay? And then you have a lot of this narcissism, and nature sooner or later will react based on that, okay? Every time there is hatred, every time there is a lot of it, there will be something that nature will follow along with. Like for example, another tsunami, another, I don't know, big tornado in some unexpected places on our planet, and tornadoes and also water events will usually represent emotional burnouts, okay? I mean, cleansing in a way. The planet will cleanse a lot of the pain we put out, okay, through our events and daily lives by committing and creating such phenomena. They have a great impact on our planet, because in the end our planet is also alive. It also has its own chakras, it also has a lot of aspects regarding it. So the point is, with the coronavirus, there is a lot of panic outside, and people have been losing jobs, people have been somewhat locked down into their homes. This is not necessarily something bad, but in a way, think about the fact that you have the time now, okay? People are very funny in numerous situations, because for the beginning they will want to leave, they will want to get out of a certain situation they call very bad, right? And afterwards they cry because they have finally been released. Think about all those people who you heard crying that, oh my god, my marriage is so, it sucks so hard, I hate my wife or my husband. But what are they doing to actually improve that relationship? And if you actually see it doesn't improve, it's like, why do you still spend time with that person? Like, why do you do that? It's like killing yourself slowly but surely. It still counts in a way as suicide. I mean, come on, you're hurting yourself, and you're also knowledgeable of that. I mean, if you're not knowledgeable of that, the misery that these things, okay? They don't eat well, so they don't have too much energy. They also spend their energy on lower vibrational feelings, which also drain them down, because they are feeding their own demons. Let's not forget one of my big quotes: people have demons to feed, and well, parasites also. So, of course, like anytime soon, okay? So the first point would be that the coronavirus actually brings back the fact that we are still animals, okay? We are still part of this nature. And when something terrific happens, when something terrible happens, when there is a big crisis, be it that it is real or only in our minds, right? Um, we will act like animals, everyone for themselves. Everyone else becomes, just a resource to be consumed in the end, because the world is also represented by a lot of consumers, but very few creators. Now, the point is, why did I say that? Um, well, I forgot what I wanted to say actually, and I think it wasn't necessarily the best idea. It usually happens to me. But hey, still, you know what? We are animals in the end. Straying away from nature won't help us because, we cannot run away from nature. Many people are stuck on the idea that, nature is only on this planet, but nature is just a specific part of the universe. If we go and colonize other planets, there's still gonna be nature in there. Probably people will not call it that for a while, I don't know, probably they will call it other ways, but it's still nature. Because nature exists in each and every environment, even if planets are not habitable by us, there is still life in there because everything has its own vibration. The rocks, like literally everything, just because something doesn't move like physically doesn't mean it is not alive. Even rocks and I don't know, everything else, the soil itself is alive, even if it does not align itself with our own ideas. Because that's another point that kind of saddens me, because people end up believing that life can only exist in the way we exist. But hey, take Venus for example. Okay, it has a sulfurous atmosphere, right? But it doesn't mean it cannot host life. There will be other life forms that can actually form there, and who knows, maybe there are already life forms on that planet. Probably on a very small scale, like bacteria and the such, but life will always bloom in the most inhospitable areas. And just take into account our planet. There are so many barely hospitable areas and there's still life in there. Why not? I mean, the universe has created so many billions of billions of billions of stars and billions of galaxies with that many stars, so imagine the variety of species and, of forms that life can actually pick. Now, the virus that supposedly we are well threatened by, well, I don't even know if this one is actually real. Like, that's what I wanted to say, because most of the time people will live in the prisons of their mind. Remember World War II, it was a very gruesome event, okay, but it was still an event that represented our evolution. Without it, we wouldn't have had jet aircrafts, okay, we wouldn't have been able to travel that much, radio technology wouldn't have developed that much, and there were many other improvements that were brought thanks to war. Because in a way, war is not necessarily good because it lowers the overall vibration of the planet, but still, consciousness has to experience. And secondarily, nothing evolves faster than during war, because you are suddenly in an animalistic comparison with the others, right? You have to compete. There's this competition. You have to become much better. And during the World War II, there have been numerous parts of the world that have been bombed in one way or another, and those alarms are still something that can be felt through the generations even today, because even though most of the people who experienced them then perished either due to bombing or whatever other war related issue, or they perished because of old age, the point is they actually transmitted that to their followers, and they also impregnated those areas they lived in with that specific fear. So through the pendulum effect, those people, the followers, the next generations are still gonna feel those fears, and slowly but surely they will still cleanse it, because well, it might take a very long time to cleanse things. Okay, now imagine that, okay, like after World War II, right, or let's say a war in a country, okay, because there are still countries nowadays that have wars in them, okay, and the general population will still be represented by humans. They will be represented by fear, and there is nothing that can remove fear entirely from a certain person. Only perception towards fear can actually make them different. Like for example with psychopathic people, they have a different perception about fear, and that is why they will appear as if they are highly resilient to it. and also their perception of fear is natural, so they don't fake it. Now also we could take into account other ideas, like for example, the Norse people, as they were portrayed in the Viking series, right? They were not afraid of death because they were born as fighters. They were taught to fight. Well, the ones who were taught to, and afterwards, they were taught that if they die fighting, they will end up in a haven, right? Or let's call it a heaven, where guess what? They will fight to the death again, and whoever dies will be, revived. They will have drinks, ales, and parties, and then they will start fighting again, right? So this improved perception about death, okay, is not necessarily that thing which would happen, if they actually died and their consciousness left, right? They wouldn't necessarily go to some Valhalla and meet the so-called Norse gods. Who knows? Maybe that would actually happen, but you see, it's also somewhat narcissistic in this part as well, because all these civilizations always had their own heavens, okay? Even if it was a different perception, right? It's still my own heaven, okay? And it's always been this idea that, my God is better than yours, my religion is superior to yours, more or less. So I don't know about the Norse people, how narcissistic they were through their own religion, but if I think about, for example, Christianity, then that kind of stinks of narcissism, because it takes into account the idea of paternity quite too much. Even God himself looks like a man. I mean, why does that entity actually have to look like a human? Okay, if God created the universe, I mean, definitely they created much more life than the life on this planet. And let's say, yes, the masses back then didn't know about other planets, and I don't know even if the occult forces behind Christianity knew this, but let's say they knew. However, the awareness of humanity has always been guided, okay? Even if we perceive of some, hidden dark forces that fight against us. Yes, there are some. I cannot say that they don't, but they do follow some principles and they do follow some ideas, because in the end, we as humans have to be guided into how to and what to experience. If there was nothing of those negative entities, right, negative forces, in a way, we wouldn't have experienced anything of these. We would have probably lived in full bliss, and in a way life would have probably been boring, because the aspect of this universe is negative tending. It will tend towards lower vibrations because it is how it was designed. Entities from higher vibrations come here to actually perceive the negativity that this universe can actually throw at them, because why wouldn't they? I mean, I doubt they actually come to experience the positivity specifically, because they are already coming from worlds of even greater positivity, so that doesn't make that much sense. And okay, but some people would say, hey, but the natural aspect of entities and people and animals is to feel calm, right? Wouldn't that be the natural state of all beings? Well, in a way, yes. I mean, every being wants to be calm, but that's more like animal thinking, because animals have a better awareness than us on certain levels, but come again, they don't need the overall awareness that we have in terms of other aspects, like for example spirituality. I'm not saying that animals are not spiritual in a way, but if you look at all animals, in the end there will always be each for themselves. If you cannot see this, well, you should probably try a bit more. Now, in terms of our awareness, being calm, okay, and being still is kind of being stagnant, and if you're not evolving, then unfortunately you're kind of dying. The point of us as humans is to experience greater peaks of awareness that animals don't necessarily show an impossibility to reach, okay? They're not, it's not impossible for them to reach, but it's more like it's not necessary to them. They want to experience life in other ways, so why would that actually be of any importance to them? So the point about this, yes, the virus's presence also makes me feel in a way good, because finally people are taking care of themselves more and more. Although I feel that the ways they actually do is not gonna necessarily help them against the so-called disease, because wearing a mask, first of all, won't necessarily help you, because you have to change that mask every 3 or 4 hours, because it gets impregnated with um, dust particles if you go out, because the wind blows, right? And those dust particles and humidity will get stored in the let's say in the filters, right, in the strata of the mask. And humidity is a good incubator for different bacteria, and you're gonna breathe in that mask, and you're gonna actually start breathing in those bacteria and the viruses. That's a big problem, because if you don't change that mask, it's actually gonna act as an incubator, okay? And you're gonna get even sicker in a way. And that is why I actually avoid people wearing masks, okay? Because people who don't wear masks, I know I live in a place of poverty, okay? And people who wear masks, they most likely will be wearing the same mask even if this outbreak will be 1 year long, okay? They will rarely change that mask. And second of all, let's say I'm in a town that's like 100,000 people, okay? It's not the actual population, but for 100,000 people, you need to supply them with 4 times that number of masks at least per day. So imagine 400,000 masks only in a single town, okay? There's no such thing as that much of a supply, right? So the point is, what do you do with the masks that have been used, okay? What about the countries that don't recycle? What will you do? You will actually take the material and reuse it, you know? So there is a big problem about that, because there's gonna be a huge aspect of consumerism that we as a race may not be able to, supplement ourselves, right? We cannot help like literally everyone, because that's how things are in a way. Now, as of what I've seen, people wear masks, people wear those gloves. Like, the question is, why the fuck do you actually wear those gloves? I mean, you don't get the virus through touching, okay? So why do you actually wear the gloves? I mean, if you use those gloves, okay, and you touch a surface that is infected, let's say with a virus, you're gonna take the virus on your gloves, okay? And when you come home, the first glove you're gonna pull down, right, with the other hand which still has a glove, but the second glove you will pull it down with the hand that has been ungloved, right? So you still touch the surface of the glove which you use to touch other so many things. And guess what? One of those things, if it was contaminated, guess what? You also contaminated one of your own hands. Now, soap and some of these products simply don't kill bacteria and viruses. The way I see it is more like advertisements only, so that you actually buy those products, because bacteria, let's face it, okay, bacteria is like almost, or even if not even more complex than any of our industrial complexes. It is capable of synthesizing around 4, 5, 6, 700 different substances, and it's also capable of defending itself from numerous aspects, and especially viruses, they're very good at that. If these microorganisms encounter something that hurts them, they will develop a cyst form, which is a hardened state. They lower their function, and they can actually live a very long period of time, until they suddenly enter an environment that supports them, and they suddenly become like better, right? They don't need that, let's say, hibernation anymore, and they become active again. So whatever aspects you are using to protect yourself, it only protects yourself from an enemy that is only in your mind. Think about a country that is having a war over there, okay? And let's say that the war has finished, okay? Imagine that it is enough to trigger those war alarms again, okay? And every person that's been through the war will actually remember the traumas they have been within, okay, they have been through. So you just have to turn on those alarms and everyone will freak out. Everyone will instantly imagine their own foes, okay? So they will imagine it's war again. They will enter that state of fear and panic, but there is nothing happening, okay? It's the same thing here, okay? Like, who the fuck, what the fuck? I mean, people, just look at them. They're so miserable, but they don't even take care of themselves. I mean, sure, people wash themselves, let's say, in a way, but most likely that's something reflexive rather than doing it just because you love your body. They hate their bodies because they eat all sorts of junk. They go to jobs that they don't like. They speak with people that they don't like. It's like people are such a mess, and in many cases people are actually trash, and also trash talking. They're putting out a lot of negativity, and guess what? They're receiving that back. And now everyone is suddenly theoretically taking care of themselves at a greater level, but people are only doing this, unfortunately, because it was so imposed, okay? Like, even in my small town, I went to a local market and it was like, nope, only 5 or 6 people have to get in at a certain time, and other shops were like, only 2 or 3 people at a certain time. It's like, what the fuck? And when I go to this big supermarket, like, we're still gonna stay like sardines in there, right? Waiting in line to, you know, paycheck our stuff and go home. It's like, what the fuck is this? The only way this virus can actually be transmitted is if someone actually coughs in your face, and I don't even understand why they say keep 2 meters of distance. Yeah, sure, if they have this virus in their lungs, by breathing in and out, there is a slight chance they can actually push the virus out of their body, but come again, it's very, very small chances. And when someone sneezes, okay, the sneeze, you know, the current they unleash, it can actually travel like 20-30 meters. If someone sneezes at the beginning of a tube, okay, of a metro, it's actually gonna reach the end of the metro, more or less. I mean, it can actually travel that far, okay, because just because someone sneezes, don't forget that physics actually take place, okay? That has a certain speed, you know, it has friction with the atmosphere, so the speed will slowly decrease, okay? But think about that. I mean, you know, it's air that moves when you sneeze. I think it has like 150, 160, I don't know, miles per hour, kilometers per hour, or meters per hour. I don't know exactly, but you know, it's a great speed, okay? It will be reduced by the friction with air, okay, but come again, it actually can travel like very, very long distances, okay? It's like, I don't find this, you know, like staying 2 meters away from a person like necessarily, you know, correct. If you have to stay in an area that is packed with people, it's like, you know, if someone sneezes, okay, they're definitely gonna spread their, you know, depending, yes, they will sneeze usually through their mouth, so, you know, they will spread their saliva and, you know, possible bacteria like through everyone, at least in a very small vicinity, because even if you put your hands to your mouth, it's, you know, it's air. It will always find places through which it can actually bypass your hand, because it's like water. Seal water in whatever way you can, but it will still find the crevice, okay? It will still find the crevice. You're actually gonna help, but think about that. If you sneeze at your elbow, the current that you unleash will actually go around your elbow upwards and downwards, be more diluted, and they can sell those for like higher prices. You know, like everything that's critical has had their prices improved, you see, because there's another narcissistic fear and panic, right? Now, I would say enough about this video because I've spoken quite a lot. I will probably throw another video about this sooner or later. I have to get back to the video game that I'm working on. About that, just a little spoiler, I've been having a lot of, let's call it a lot of, well, success with it, I can say. I'm not gonna spoil like too much about it. So the point is, this map is an old map that I'm willing to bring back and also create a demo about my game. It's not gonna regard the present day chapter that I'm working on lower down here with several of the maps. Like some of the maps are only test maps where I test different aspects, because I don't want to load a huge map like and test things on a huge map from time to time. I just want to test some simple stuff. Okay, I've added visuals, I've been tinkering with characters, but unfortunately I don't actually have some softwares that would create me some of the portraits I need for these characters. Even if I have several softwares, I cannot create, I cannot create, faces that would really represent my characters. Now, the point about this is, I'm keeping up the good progress. Keep up with your own. Don't forget to become more introspective, and life is awesome. Also, so are you. Ferengi on board, signing out.